You get a headache and you take an aspirin. You get an infection and you take antibiotics. You break a bone and a doctor puts it in a cast. But what happened when your ancestors got sick 50,000 years ago? The answer isn't just fascinating. It completely rewrites what we thought we knew about human intelligence. Picture this. You're a Neanderthal living in what's now Spain. You have a tooth abscess. The pain is unbearable. Your jaw is swollen. You can barely eat. And somehow you know exactly which plants to chew on to make it stop hurting. Scientists found her, a female Neanderthal who died around 50,000 years ago at a site called El Sidron. When researchers analyzed the fossilized plaque on her teeth, they found something nobody expected: yarrow, chamomile, and traces of poplar bark. These aren't food. They're bitter. They have almost no nutritional value, but every single one of them is a painkiller. The poplar bark contains the same active ingredient as aspirin. The chamomile soothes inflammation. This woman was self-medicating, and she was doing it 40,000 years before we invented penicillin. Actually, about that penicillin, they found that too. Embedded in her dental plaque were traces of Penicillium rubens, the same fungus Alexander Fleming discovered in 1928. She was using an antibiotic 50 millennia too early. How did she know? That's the question that keeps anthropologists up at night, because this wasn't luck. The same site revealed other Neanderthals doing the exact same thing. Different individuals, same plants, same treatments. They had a medical system. They were passing down knowledge, generation after generation, mother to daughter, healer to apprentice, all without a single written word. And here's where it gets stranger. They weren't the only ones. In 2019, archaeologist Karen Hardy analysed plant remains from 7 sites across the Near East. The sites dated back as far as 790,000 years ago. Different species of humans, different time periods. Out of 212 plant species identified, 60% were medicinal. Not food, medicine. Another 15% were toxic in large doses, but healing in small ones. Our ancestors weren't just gathering random plants. They were building pharmacies, but they didn't figure this out on their own. Watch a sick chimpanzee sometime. It'll seek out specific leaves, bitter ones it normally ignores. The leaves contain compounds that kill intestinal parasites. The chimp doesn't understand biochemistry. It just knows. Sick apes eat the pith of Vernonia amygdalina, a plant from the daisy family loaded with medicinal properties. They've been doing this for millions of years. Your ancestors were doing the same thing. Observing animals, watching what they ate when they were sick, testing it themselves, remembering what worked. Even the methods were sophisticated. They didn't just chew raw plants. Tartar samples from 50,000-year-old teeth show something remarkable. Microscopic starch granules with tiny cracks. The cracks only form one way: heat. They were roasting medicinal plants before consuming them. Chemical analysis found traces of wood smoke embedded in the same samples. They were cooking their medicine, breaking down the plant cells, releasing the active compounds, making them easier to absorb. And they were making infusions, steeping herbs in hot water. We know this from residue found on stone tools and early pottery. Some vessels contained fermented plant mixtures, herbs combined with wild honey or natural yeasts. The alcohol didn't just preserve the mixture, it amplified the antiseptic properties. They were creating tinctures, prehistoric medicine cabinets that would last through winter. The woman in Spain with the tooth abscess? She represents something profound. She wasn't some primitive human grunting in pain. She was informed, educated in a system of knowledge that stretched back hundreds of thousands of years. And what she knew about healing was just the beginning. Because ancient humans didn't just treat pain with plants. They performed surgery, real surgery, the kind that would make you question everything you think you know about the Stone Age. The oldest evidence dates to around 6000 BC. Skulls found in North Africa, Ukraine, and Portugal, all with perfectly circular holes bored through the bone. This is trepanation, brain surgery, performed with stone tools. And here's what nobody expected: they survived. We know because the bone shows signs of healing. New bone growth around the edges of the hole. That only happens if you're alive. According to a 2017 study, survival rates hovered around 40%. 40%, with flint knives and obsidian scrapers, no anesthesia beyond maybe some fermented herbs, no antibiotics, no sterile surgical environment, just skill, knowledge, and nerve. Anthropologists studying cave paintings believed trepanation treated migraines, epilepsy, and mental disorders. The theory was simple. Drill a hole, let the evil spirits out. Except it actually worked sometimes, not because of spirits, because skull fractures create pressure. Bone fragments lodge in the brain. Trepanation cleared them out, relieved the swelling, gave the patient a chance. In Peru, where trepanation was especially common, it became standard emergency treatment after head injuries. The surgeons got good at it, really good. Later specimens show survival rates climbing even higher. They were learning, refining technique, passing it down. But surgery wasn't limited to skulls. Broken bones were another matter entirely. Your ancestor falls during a hunt. Femur snaps clean through. In the wild, that's a death sentence. You can't run, can't gather food, can't escape predators, except humans figured out a solution. Clay. They covered the injury in wet clay, let it harden into a cast. The bone healed straight. We found skeletons with perfectly set fractures, healed so well the person lived for years afterward. Some cultures used rawhide, soaked, molded, then dried tight around the break, form-fitting splints that immobilized the bone completely. In the Americas, they had another technique for wounds. Ants, specific species with powerful pincers. You'd hold the ant above the wound, let it bite down, then remove the body. The head stayed attached, pincers locked in place like surgical staples, holding the wound closed while it healed. Colonists arriving in Australia found indigenous people stitching wounds and setting bones in hardened mud. Medical historians now believe these practices existed in prehistory, passed down for thousands of generations. Even dental work has ancient roots. In 2016, researchers examined a skeleton from northern Italy, 14,000 years old. One of the molars had a massive cavity, and someone had tried to fix it. Using scanning electron microscopy, they found striations inside the cavity, V-shaped marks with parallel microscratches. The pattern matched experimental cuts made with flint too. Ulls. Someone had scraped out the decay, chipped away infected enamel, tried to clean the tooth, 14,000 years before modern dentistry. But perhaps the most remarkable medical kit ever discovered belonged to one man. Ötzi, the Iceman, frozen in the Alps 5,300 years ago. When scientists thawed him out, they found a walking pharmacy, birch polypore fungus tucked in his gear. It kills intestinal parasites and fights bacterial infections. Poppy seeds for pain, sloe berries for the vertigo, and skin problems caused by Lyme disease, which he had. Along with intestinal parasites, narrowed arteries, and lactose intolerance. He was falling apart, and he knew it. His kit wasn't random. It was curated. Specific treatments for specific conditions. He understood his own body, knew what was wrong, carried the remedies. This wasn't primitive survival. This was informed self-care in the Stone Age. Every piece of evidence points to the same conclusion. Your ancestors weren't helpless against disease. They observed, they tested, they remembered, they taught. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans built a medical tradition without writing a single word. And when you take an aspirin today, you're using the same active compound found in willow bark. The same plant your ancestors chewed 40,000 years ago. They figured it out first. The knowledge didn't disappear. It transformed. Medieval herbalists inherited recipes passed down from Roman physicians, who learned from Greek doctors who studied Egyptian texts based on practices older than pyramids. That unbroken chain stretches back to a Neanderthal woman pressing yarrow against her infected gum. We like to think modern medicine invented healing. We didn't. We systematized it, tested it, proved why it works. But the core discoveries, the plants that kill pain, the surgeries that save lives, the understanding that broken bones can mend if held still. All of that came from people we'd never recognize as doctors. People who couldn't read, couldn't write, could barely speak compared to us. Yet they knew enough to survive conditions that would kill you today without a hospital. They passed that knowledge parent to child for 300,000 years. And the next time you swallow a pill or set a broken arm, you're using technology older than agriculture, older than cities, older than civilization itself. Your ancestors weren't waiting to be saved by modern medicine. They were already saving themselves.